Sigmund Freud's quotes and psychological insights. 1. Unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. This means that when you hide or ignore your emotions, they don't go away. Instead, they stay inside and can come out later in more harmful or destructive ways. In simpler terms, Freud believed that if you don't deal with your feelings, they can cause bigger problems later, like bad behavior or emotional issues. 2. The mind is like an iceberg. It floats with 1/7 of its bulk above water. This means that only a small part of our mind is conscious, what we are aware of, while most of it is unconscious, hidden beneath the surface, affecting how we think and act without us realizing it. In simpler terms, Freud thought that what we know about our mind is just the tip of the iceberg. Most of what drives our behavior is hidden in the unconscious. 3. Out of your vulnerabilities will come your strength. This means that by understanding and accepting your weaknesses and fears, you can become stronger. Freud believed that exploring the unconscious mind helps you grow and become more resilient. In simpler terms, Freud thought that when you face your vulnerabilities, you can turn them into strengths and become more powerful as a person. 4. Dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. This means that dreams are the best way to understand what's going on in the unconscious mind. Freud believed that by analyzing dreams, we can discover hidden desires, fears, and conflicts. In simpler terms, Freud thought that dreams are like a pathway to uncovering what's hidden deep inside our minds, helping us understand our true feelings. 5. Most people do not really want freedom, because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. This means that many people are afraid of true freedom because it requires them to take responsibility for their choices and actions, which can be difficult or scary. Freud believed that people often avoid this to escape facing uncomfortable truths about themselves. In simpler terms, Freud thought that while people say they want to be free, they often avoid it because freedom means being responsible for their own lives, which many find frightening. 6. We are never so defenseless against suffering as when we love. This means that when we love someone, we are more vulnerable to pain and suffering because we care deeply and can be hurt if we lose that person or things go wrong. Freud saw love as powerful but also something that opens us up to emotional pain. In simpler terms, Freud believed that when we love, we are at our most vulnerable, because the more we care, the more we can be hurt. 7. In the small matters trust the mind, in the large ones the heart. This means that for everyday decisions, you should rely on your logic and thinking, your mind. But for big life choices, it's important to also listen to your emotions and intuition, your heart. In simpler terms, Freud believed that while it's good to use logic for smaller things, for important decisions, you should trust both your thoughts and feelings. 8. The goal of all life is death. This means that Freud believed, deep down, humans have a hidden drive towards self-destruction and returning to a state of non-existence, which he called the death drive, thanatos. This exists alongside our desire to live and seek pleasure, eros. In simpler terms, Freud thought that while people want to live and enjoy life, there's also a hidden part of us that pushes towards self-destruction or the end of life. 9. Where ID was, there shall ego be. This means that as people grow and heal, their wild, instinctual urges, the ID, should be brought under control by their rational mind, the ego. This helps create balance and self-control. In simpler terms, Freud believed that we need to learn to manage our basic instincts with thoughtful, rational thinking to live a more balanced life. 10. The first human who hurled an insult instead of a stone was the founder of civilization. This means that civilization began when people started using words and language to express anger or frustration instead of using violence. Freud saw this as a key moment in controlling primal instincts and creating society. In simpler terms, Freud believed that when people stopped fighting and started using language to solve problems, it marked the beginning of civilized society. Psychological insights. 1. Psychoanalysis. Freud's theory of psychoanalysis is about helping people understand their unconscious thoughts and feelings, things they aren't aware of. This is done through techniques like free association, saying whatever comes to mind, dream analysis, and transference, how people feel about others, especially the therapist. By bringing these hidden thoughts to the surface, people can work through their internal struggles. In simpler terms, Freud's psychoanalysis helps people figure out their hidden thoughts and feelings so they can deal with their personal problems. 2. The unconscious mind. Freud said the mind has 3 parts. 1. The ID, which holds our unconscious desires and instincts, what we want right away. 2. The ego, which is the rational part of us that tries to make sensible choices, and 3. The superego, which represents the rules and values we learn from society, what we think is right and wrong. Freud believed that much of what we do comes from hidden conflicts between these parts. In simpler terms, Freud thought that our behavior is shaped by hidden struggles between what we want, what we think is right, and what we try to do rationally. 3. Repression. Freud believed that people sometimes push away uncomfortable or painful memories and feelings into their unconscious mind to avoid dealing with them. This process is called repression. However, these hidden emotions can lead to mental health problems if they are not dealt with. In simpler terms, Freud thought that when people hide their painful feelings deep inside, it can cause emotional issues later on if they don't face them. 4. Oedipus complex. Freud believed that young boys go through a stage where they have an unconscious desire for their mother and see their father as a rival for her attention. As they grow, they start to identify with their father and push away those feelings, which helps them develop their sense of gender and grow emotionally. In simpler terms, Freud thought that young boys might feel like they compete with their dad for their mom's love, but they eventually grow out of it by relating more to their dad, which helps them mature. 5. Defense mechanisms. Freud believed that people use defense mechanisms to protect themselves from feeling anxious or dealing with uncomfortable thoughts. These are things people do without realizing it, like denial, pretending something isn't happening. Projection, blaming others for your own feelings. Displacement, taking out your feelings on someone else, and rationalization, making excuses for something uncomfortable. These mechanisms help reduce stress by changing how we see reality. In simpler terms, Freud thought that people unconsciously use tricks to avoid feeling bad or anxious by distorting reality in ways that make them feel better. 6. Eros and Thanatos. Freud believed that human behavior is driven by 2 main forces. A. Eros, the life instinct, which is about the drive for survival, reproduction, and seeking pleasure. B. Thanatos, the death instinct, which includes feelings of aggression, self-destruction, and a desire to go back to a state of non-existence. In simpler terms, Freud thought we are motivated by both a desire to live and enjoy life and a hidden urge toward aggression or self-destruction. 7. Libido. Freud described libido as the energy connected to sexual and life-preserving desires. He believed it was a big part of what drives human behavior and plays an important role in shaping our personality and relationships. In simpler terms, Freud thought that libido is the life energy that pushes us to seek pleasure and survive, and it influences how we act and connect with others. 8. Psychosexual development. Freud believed that as we grow up, we go through different stages of personality development. A. Oral, focused on the mouth. B. Anal, focused on control, like potty training. C. Phallic, awareness of gender and family relationships. D. Latency, a quieter phase of learning and socializing, and E. Genital, focused on mature relationships. If there are unresolved problems during any stage, they can cause psychological issues later in life. In simpler terms, Freud thought that how we develop at each stage of childhood affects who we become as adults, and if we don't work through problems during those stages, they can lead to issues later on. 9. Transference. Freud noticed that during therapy, patients sometimes transfer or project feelings they have toward important people in their lives, like parents or partners, onto the therapist. These feelings might be positive or negative. Recognizing and working through these feelings is an important part of psychoanalysis. In simpler terms, Freud found that people in therapy often start to feel the same way about their therapist as they do about people in their lives. Understanding and dealing with these feelings helps in the healing process. Freud's ideas, while controversial, have deeply influenced psychology and continue to be foundational for understanding human behavior, emotions, and the unconscious mind.